So you can see how lucky we are to have Congressman Poe as one of our biggest, best supporters on these issues. I want to now introduce Judy Woodruff, who doesn't really need an introduction. She's been part of our lives in our living rooms for many, many years, both on PBS NewsHour, but also many years at CNN. What you may not know about Judy is that she is also the founding co-chair of the International Women's Media Foundation, which is a wonderful group that promotes women in communications, promotes women's journalism, promotes the freedom of women's speech around the world. And I invite you to take a look at that group. They've been a wonderful partner to us over the years. So thank you, Judy, for taking time out. We know you're on a plane shortly to cover the Ohio primaries. Yay. So without further ado, please, Judy.
Thank you, Ritu. Yes, I am. I'm about to head out of town to cover the exciting Republican presidential contest, and I'll be in Ohio. In fact, I'm heading to Columbus and then Dayton and Springfield and a few places in between today. For those of you who know the state of Ohio, it's endlessly fascinating. Those of us who cover politics. But when I got a call from Ritu's office, from Women Thrive Worldwide, telling me about this meeting on this day, I said I'm going to delay my departure until I have a chance just to come by and to say a few words. First of all, to congratulate you on the extraordinary work that you do. That clearly you have helped to put these issues on the map at a time when it's not easy to do that. And so you've gathered together such an amazing group of people here. I just want to commend you, not only for the work you do this morning, but for the work you do all the time. I'm here because I care about this issue. I care as a woman, and I care as a journalist. I see how fortunate we are to live in the relatively safe places that we live, whether it's in Washington or New York or another part of this country. And so many of us are so blessed to live in places and in families and in situations where we don't see the kind of violence that Congressman Poe was just describing, that does exist right in our very midst, right in the city that we're in right now, the District of Columbia, and in all the 50 states in this country. But so often it's below the radar, it's not seen, and that is why the work of this organization is so important, to bring it above the radar and to get people talking about it. Even before Hillary Clinton said in 1995 that women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights, we know there has been a growing recognition that the two cannot be separated. And yet, because women are so marginalized in so many societies still on this planet in the year 2012, as hard as it is to believe, especially societies in conflict, the stories of these women are often overlooked. We focus on a war. We focus on the weapons of war, the strategies, the tactics. We talk to the leaders in battle on one side or another, but not enough on the civilian victims of war. It is one of the stories. I just would cite a courageous journalist. Yes, I'm a co-founder of the International Women's Media Foundation, and every year we give Courage in Journalism awards to women who are amazingly putting themselves, their families, in jeopardy in order to report stories. Marie Colvin, many of you read about her a few days ago. She was reporting from Syria. She reported for the London Sunday Times. We gave her a Courage in Journalism award 4 or 5 years ago because of the incredible work she was doing. Her view was that when you go in to cover these situations in conflict, you want to be behind the lines. You want to be reporting on the women and the children and the family members who are affected by war. But that's just a touch, the tip of the story that I think we in the media have got to be aware of, and we've got to continue to be vigilant about and not to overlook as we cover countries in conflict, as we cover what appear to be a hot fighting war. We cannot forget the families and the people who are affected. I'll just tell you quickly, I did a look over the last week at some of the stories we at the PBS NewsHour have reported on just in the last year and a half about women victims of violence. I'm just going to tell you what a few of them are because I think they give you an amazing example of the kinds of challenges that Women Thrive Worldwide face as an organization, but the kinds of stories, frankly, that the news media must continue to report. September 2010, a report on the mass rape in Congo. We talked to the reporter who was there, talked to victims, to the rapists, and to the advocates trying to end this practice. In many of the instances where it had happened, UN peacekeepers had been standing not very far away and didn't do anything about it. At the time of this report, Congo had a retraining program, actually, for the soldiers who acknowledged this had become a practice. It was just accepted behavior. And then after that report, our correspondent interviewed Margot Wallstrom, who was then the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence and Conflict, and Zainab Salbi, the founder and CEO of Women for Women International. In March of 2011, just a year ago, my colleague Ray Suarez interviewed an outspoken advocate for women's rights and for the prosecution of violence against women in Guatemala. Her name is Norma Cruz. I see Ritu nodding. Her line of work made her a target and continues to make her a target for threats in the Guatemalan society, where nearly 45% of women experience violence in their lifetime. July 2011, I'll move through this quickly. My colleague Hari Srinivasan reported a story about child marriage. He interviewed an amazing photographer, a woman named Stephanie Sinclair with National Geographic, who traveled around the world documenting this terrible practice. Among other things, they reported that over 50 million girls under the age of 17 are already married in developing countries. 100 million more are expected to marry in the next decade. Stephanie Sinclair had already traveled to Yemen, to Afghanistan, Nepal, India, Ethiopia. She gained intimate access. She photographed these brides who could be as young as 5 years old at the time of marriage. Powerful photographs. I remember that story vividly. In October 2011, just a few months ago, the Nobel Peace Prize went to 3 fighters for peace and women's rights. You all are aware of this. In Africa and the Middle East, of course, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in Liberia, Lema Gabawi, I think that's how you pronounce it, the peace activist in Liberia, and I will not pronounce this correctly, Tawakkul Carmen of Yemen, who was a pro-democracy campaigner. But so much of what they were talking about was how women are impacted. And finally, in January, just a month and a half ago, my colleague did a story about a rape survivor at a camp in Haiti, at one of the tent camps that are still there years after the earthquake. What is it? Something like 500,000 people are still living in these tent camps, and we won't be surprised to know that this sort of violence continues to take place. And then there are the ongoing stories in Afghanistan. We saw what happened in Egypt during the revolution when there were the attacks on women. There were news reports about those. My colleague Margaret Warner was in Bahrain a few months ago and reported on how women were singled out there. These are just a few of the stories that we have covered, and they really are just the tip. They just begin to tell you how widespread this crisis is in our society around the world, in the human society. So I would just say to you that, yes, there's been some reporting. I'm pleased with what the NewsHour has been able to do. We need to do more. All news organizations, even at a time of shrinking resources, we all need to do more. And I know it's tough when there are many pulls and tugs on us. There's so many that this has been such an incredible news period here in the United States over the last few years. But again, Women Thrive Worldwide is doing the kind of work day in and day out, telling these stories and giving us hope that they can be overcome, giving us hope that lives can be turned around, that women can be shown a different way, that the men and others who are committing the violence in their lives can be shown another way. So I just want to say congratulations to you, to all of you. I think it's marvelous that you are here. And I've already tweeted about, is it none in three, just a few minutes ago. So maybe there'll be an epidemic of tweeting today about this. Congratulations. I'm so honored to be with all of you, and I wish you the very best. Thank you.